Welcome everyone to our special session where we are announcing 2 new free products within the Jack Westin line to help you guys better prepare for the day of your test. I'm really excited to give you guys some more information about these tools and how this can help you with your test prep, whether you're looking at day 1 of your prep and you haven't prepped at all, or maybe even if you're a couple of weeks from your actual test day. Either way, I am sure that the stuff we're going to talk about today is going to be vitally useful and an invaluable tool to help you progress and master the MCAT on the day of your actual test. But first, a little bit about me, because some of you guys may not know who I am. So my name is Phil Hawkins. I am the MCAT director here at Jack Westin. I've been here for quite a while at this point, but before this, I have been at other test prep companies. I worked on the content teams at Kaplan and Next Step and Blueprint. So I've been in the MCAT industry helping students prepare for the MCAT for a little bit over a decade at this point. But I'm not somebody who just works on the content. I'm somebody who's been through this. So I went to the University of Nebraska Medical Center where I was an MD PhD student. That means that I was getting my PhD simultaneously while also getting my medical degree. My PhD work was in pharmacology and experimental neuroscience. Most of my focus was on the neuro side of things, specifically learning and memory, generally within the context of Alzheimer's. But to be honest, a lot of the work that I did then in trying to understand the nature of memory and how it is that we learn and how to learn better and make memory stick with you is actually remarkably relevant to the world of test prep. Talking about how we can study today and make sure that we're going to remember that information 3 or 4 months from now on the day of your actual test. Now, most of you guys probably know about Jack Westin because of our daily passages. So we create new questions every single day, and we release them for free. And so these questions come in all different shapes and forms. We have the AAMC style stuff where you might have a passage about, let's say, a neuron. And within that passage, there's going to be some tricky data interpretation. If we're trying to mimic the AAMC, they have some complex questions in the way the data is presented. But also, within that one passage, which might be about neurons, you might see some questions about capacitors or circuits or neuroanatomy or maybe even endocrinology. And so that one passage will be a mixture of a whole bunch of different topics. And so we release daily questions within that AAMC style. However, on the other hand, if you are looking, let's say you just spent the morning studying fluids and you want to practice with some fluid questions. Now, it's not super useful for you to see a bunch of questions with a big mixture of topics, right? Like endocrinology and capacitors and circuits, right? You want to just do passages on fluids. So that's where our fundamentals come in. So you might be able to go in here and filter and create a QBank exam focusing specifically on what it is that you want to work on, for example, fluids. And so you'll be able to see a passage as well as a bunch of questions focused just on that one topic. Now we have this in the scope of the passages. We also have this in the scope of discretes. So if you're looking for AAMC style discretes or fundamental discrete questions, all of those still exist. Now these questions, we make these every single day and we release new questions every single day. At this point, we're at about 6,500 questions, but it's about 100 questions per week, or at least that's what it's been for the last several months. And so note that these questions are going to continue to come. You'll always be able to see new questions at Jack Westin, as well as the question bank that we already have is I think it's 2 or 3 times every single other company's test prep bank. And not only do we have more questions, but ours are free. And so this is something that's really important to us at Jack Westin, is we want to make sure for the future of medicine, it really is best that our physicians come from a wide variety of backgrounds. And so putting these barriers in the way of students as they prepare is something that we think we want to kind of tear down those barriers, because that's what's going to be best for humanity and be best for the field of medicine. So the question bank isn't actually our only free resource, though. Other free resources include the AAMC Outline. So the AAMC releases an outline saying these are the things that we're going to hold you accountable for. And this outline is just basically a list of topics. What we've done is we took that outline and we broke it down and we explain what it is that you need to know about each topic. What are the key terms that you need to be able to recognize on test day? What are the equations and the units that you need to know? How is this information likely to be presented on the day of your actual test? You can think about the AAMC Outline as basically an MCAT textbook, basically going through and describing every single topic that the AAMC says they're going to hold you accountable for. This is an incredibly valuable resource, and once again, it's completely free. This is something that's basically an MCAT textbook of all the content that you are going to be held accountable for on the day of your actual test. We also have free trial sessions. So I personally do a session pretty much every single Monday. I think it's been every Monday for about a year at this point. I don't think I've missed even a single one, even when that Monday fell on a holiday. And in those sessions, we talk about all sorts of different topics. This week, we are talking about memory and learning, which is, as you guys can guess, is one of the topics that I'm particularly excited about. It relates a lot to my PhD work. But it's also memory and the way it works and the way that we learn. That's actually a topic on the MCAT, right? Like, what's the difference between iconic memory or procedural or declarative or explicit, semantic, episodic, iconic, echoic? All of these are different types of memories that the MCAT is going to hold you accountable for and expect you to know. And so I'm doing a free lecture just to the public to help you guys understand those topics even better. Now, Jack also does free cars sessions every Tuesday generally, and we also have special guest speakers. Like this week, we have Nicole Sam talking about how to work on your personal statement. And all of these are another free resource that we create for you guys to better prepare you for not just the MCAT, but in the case of Nicole's stuff, but to help you prepare your application overall. We also have our Chrome extension. Now, the Chrome extension, compared to everything else up until this point that I've mentioned, the Chrome extension is something that's really just for students when they get close to the day of their actual test. If a student is prepping for 4 months, I really don't expect them to use the Chrome extension much until like the last 5 or 6 weeks of their prep. So when you get to that last little bit before the day of your test, you want to be practicing a ton with the AAMC. The AAMC has their own exams, they have their own materials, the section bank, the QBanks, their flashcards. All of those things are really good resources to prep for. They're the ones who make the actual test, so you should be practicing with their materials. That's why our courses are built around those materials as well. But while the questions are great and the passages are great, their explanations, to put it nicely, can be a little bit confusing. There are times where when the AAMC is explaining an answer, it's like B is correct because it's correct, and A, C, and D are wrong because they're not B. And like that really doesn't help you learn anything. Once again, the questions are great, the passages are great, but I think it makes it really obvious that the AAMC is a testing company, not a teaching company, right? So what we've done is, once again, for free, you can go to our website, jackwestin.com, download the AAMC extension, and basically when you're doing AAMC practice, you still see all of the AAMC materials. You'll see all their questions. You still see the AAMC explanation, but you'll be able to see an additional, more thorough explanation that we've created. And at this point, we've covered every single thing from the AAMC, I believe, except for the flashcards. That's something that is coming soon. We've been rolling these out over the course of the last year, adding to it. And at this point, I think all we have left is the AAMC flashcards. So this is also another critical resource that pretty much every student should be using as they get close to their test day, especially once they start hitting the AAMC materials towards the end of their prep. Now, Jack Westin is famous for cars, and so we do have practice exams within the car stuff if you want to practice how you're going to do on test day. We also have the Jack Westin podcast that I personally do with Azai Calderon as well. She is a wonderful medical student and also a wonderful teacher here at Jack Westin. Azai is a good friend of mine. We've been working together for years at this point. She's also an M2 at Harvard, so she's currently in her second year of medical school. She has a lot of insights, and so as the two of us have gone to medical school and we spend all of our time basically thinking and talking about the MCAT, there's a lot of very valuable insights to be gained from there. You'll be able to find that podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcast or even YouTube. Now, all of these resources, and I know it seems like it's a lot, but the reason I wanted to bring these up for you guys is because all of these are free resources. These are things that we do. We go out of our way to create these resources for you guys because, as I mentioned before, That's really what medicine should be about. It should be about a community coming together and helping each other however we can. And so this brings us to perhaps actually the topic of this session. We have 2 brand new free tools that I'm super excited about. These are tools that actually, before I even started working at Jack Westin, I met with Jack, and like the very first time I met Jack, before we worked together, we sat down and we talked about what would be the best thing that we could create for medical students. What's the one thing that they need more than anything else? And so this is something that has been years in the making, and this is something that we have been working on for countless months, going through looking at every single question that we've created in order to create this very valuable tool. So without further ado, what are these tools? So we have our new analytics system, which I am incredibly excited to talk about, as well as our diagnostic tests. So both of these are 2 separate tools that I'm really excited to help you guys understand how to use them thoroughly and how to best utilize this to increase your score quickly. And that's really where this comes out. These are tools, like separate from all of our other tools, these are tools that are going to help you create your own study plan and focus things on a way that is going to be most useful for you specifically. So what does this look like? Well, if we look at the homepage at jackwestin.com, there'll be a new tab called Analytics. So within this analytics system, you'll be able to click on that and be able to see some very interesting information. So looking at this, we can see that our daily accuracy, we kind of started up pretty good down here. Something happened on December 28th, and we might dive in a little bit more on that as we talk through the analytics system. But since then, for this student, things have been pretty solid. Up in the 80, maybe even 90%, with an uptick here on January 6th, and things kind of dropped a little, but things seem to they're kind of coming back up. This is an incredibly useful way for you to see how are you progressing on a daily basis. How are you, what's happening as you change up your strategies? How are your scores being affected? Now, this is useful in and of itself, but it's even more useful when you realize you can start to filter this into specific topics. Like within biology, this student seems like they're trending pretty solidly up near the top, especially compared to, overall, looking at the different topics, big picture. You can also filter this based on just what happened in the last week, or even a custom time frame if you want to see what happened, over sometime between Thanksgiving and Christmas, what happened in that region. You'll also be able to see some statistics, looking at what are the correct number of questions, what's your incomplete answers, even how much of the question banks you have used. At this point, as I mentioned, we're at about 6,500 questions, and that will continue to go up constantly. And so we have a good idea of kind of where we're at here. But the real value of the analytics system, while all this stuff is very useful information, the real value comes from understanding what do I need to work on as a student? What are my weak areas? So we're really excited to be able to provide you a little bit of insight to help you find your weak areas and focus on them specifically. So looking at this, your quick stats, your strongest area, this student's strongest area, electron transport chain, sociology, other senses, that's besides vision and sound, that's how the AAMC breaks it down, and also the musculoskeletal system. Weakest areas, periodic motion of waves, motion of forces, carboxylic acid reactions, light. So just at a quick glance, it seems like biology, psych, and social are pretty strong for this student, and maybe the physics and orgo areas are a little bit weaker. Now, let's say I want a deeper dive here. So you can scroll down and you can start to see what's your breakdown based on individual topics. And this actually starts to reinforce what we just saw. For this student, orgo is definitely a little bit of a weak area. Physics, also some chemistry stuff. They tend to be pretty strong in the psychology, sociology, bio, and biochem. But you can even do a deeper dive here. So even in the realm of biochemistry. So looking at this, it looks like the student is getting about 90% of their questions correct when it comes to biochemistry. But if we do a deeper dive, you'll see of the topics, amino acids, protein structure, enzyme structure, all of these are areas where they're really solid. The first kind of dip occurs here in lipids. We also have glycolysis, where it's not bad, but like they missed one question here. The pentose phosphate pathway and glycogen metabolism, fatty acid and protein metabolism, tissue specificity and regulation of metabolism. And so we've broken down these topics into over 100 different topics to be able to find and diagnose your weak areas really quickly. So even in this student who's getting about 90% of their biochem questions correct, if you do a deeper dive, you start to see a story here where this student is struggling with metabolism, this like fatty acid and protein metabolism, and then also lipids. So if this student were to spend some time, like let's say they just spent one morning, like spending like one Saturday morning, just diving in and covering lipids and metabolism. Those are the only two real weaknesses this student has in biochemistry. And so this data is incredibly useful because it helps a student to see, like a lot of times students feel like I'm just good at bio and I'm bad at physics. But now we can see like, no, like if you spent just a little bit more time studying some very specific content areas, maybe instead of getting 90% of your biochem questions correct, you'd be getting 98% or 95% of those biochem questions. So just one morning spent studying metabolism and lipids might have a huge impact on how well they're doing in this one specific area. And this is really what it comes down to. The PhD in me for my PhD work is kind of shining here because one of the most powerful things in the world of research and science and like how to improve on the MCAT, like that should be a science. The most powerful thing here is data, right? The more data you have, the better you can aggregate that and apply it, right? And so starting to be able to realize like where specifically are your weaknesses, being able to diagnose those and find them incredibly quickly is the single best way to improve for the MCAT. A lot of times I will see other students or test prep companies say, oh, you just need to do this one thing. Like you just need to take a bunch of practice exams, or you just need to do flashcards, or you just need to look at amino acids. And like, that's all you need to do to master the MCAT. Now what's tricky and difficult there is that's not necessarily bad advice for some students, right? So when a student says like, oh, this is what I did and that's all that I needed to do and I did great, I don't think that they're lying. I just think that for some students, like if you're a student who your biggest problems are data interpretation and timing and endurance, then just doing a bunch of exams will make you better. It will help you. But if on the other hand, you don't know what insulin is, then doing a bunch of exams isn't going to help that. And so data helps you understand like what is it that you need to work on. At this point, I have worked personally in my over a decade of experience working on the MCAT. I've worked personally with over 1,000 students. Like I'm talking like in individual interactions and in individual one-on-one conversations. And the one thing that keeps coming up is that you guys are all different. So I might have like some of you guys are just inherently good at understanding abstract philosophical passages. And some of you might struggle a little bit with that though, but on the other hand, like even though you struggle with that abstract philosophical passage, you tend to have a better understanding of just like equations. And so math just kind of makes sense. And so a lot of the physics and chemistry come easier. So this will allow you to understand your weak areas and find them. Now this is critical for not just students at the beginning of their prep, although it is useful for them. At the very beginning, if you find your weak areas, you can build a study plan around that and know that like, okay, I've got 5 months to prepare for this exam or 4 months to prepare for this exam. These are the areas where I want to spend my time. And these are the areas that I don't really need to spend a lot of time in because I'm already getting most of those questions correct. Those of you who are studying for the MCAT, as well as once you're in medical school, know that time is one of your most valuable resources. So if you can make sure that all the time you're investing into prepping is yielding good results, then that's going to be more valuable than pretty much anything else. Now, these students that are at the beginning of their prep, this is really useful to help them kind of create a study plan and focus in on those weak areas. But also for students who, like, their exam is maybe at 3 or 4 weeks away, and they've been prepping for 5 months, and they got more month left in their prep. This information will help you figure out, like, where should I be spending my time in these last few weeks to get the most juice from my effort, from the squeeze, right? You want to make sure that you're getting as much bang for your buck, the biggest score increase for your investment of time. And so knowing where those weak areas are and knowing where your strengths are is really useful. Now, there's even more information here. So diving down, we have this breakdown between like easy and moderate and hard questions. Now, this student is missing mostly hard questions, which makes sense, right? Like, most of the questions that are missing should be the hard questions. Note that we have a breakdown here of how many questions are correct, how many questions are incorrect, and also how many questions are just unanswered, and that information can be useful as well. Now, if on the other hand I had a student, like for this student who is just missing just mainly hard questions, I'm going to expect that at this point, really what's happening is they're missing most of their questions due to like turning gears and like applying things and making connections, because all of that is a lot more difficult. So if you're doing a lot of AAMC style passages, a lot of those questions can be really tricky, and those are very often the harder questions. And so missing that might not mean that you have a specific content gap. It might just mean you had some trouble with data analysis or data interpretation. If, on the other hand, a student, not necessarily this student, but if another student is missing mostly easy questions or a fair amount of easy questions, what that tells me is this student is probably missing some fundamental ideas that just like spending a little bit of time studying certain topics would give them the information that they need to get those easier questions. Like, if I just knew that tryptophan was a hydrophobic amino acid, I would have got this question correct. And so this information here between the easy, moderate, and hard questions is also really useful. You can even do a deep dive. Note that, like, as we mentioned, this December 28th date, something like that wasn't a good day. So now you have the ability to go back and see and look at information about all the different dates that you've taken a look at the Jack Westin materials. And so if we go back to the December 28th, note that we did a fundamental discrete question set. Maybe I want to figure out kind of like what happened here. And so I'll be able to jump into the details. So within this, I could see how I performed on this. What were the settings? It was untimed. I had no solutions. It was a fundamental discrete question set. And it looks like this set was pretty much just organic chemistry. And I really didn't do very well in that set. And so you can start to see the actual individual questions. So this set was all about separation techniques. And so this is really useful because now you might be able to spend some time studying separation techniques. And we know that this is a weak area. So we'll spend some time studying separation techniques and then go ahead and dive in and retake this quiz. And so you'll be able to like jump back into the questions and take a look at them at a later date with this triangle button here off to the right. And so this is all incredibly valuable stuff. You can start to go down and see like what happened on specific dates, how much questions, how many questions you missed, what questions you got right, how much time you spent on each individual question. And you can do this with all of the different quizzes that you're going through here. So hopefully I've convinced you guys that the analytics system is incredibly valuable. Like, data is king. The more you know about your trends, your weaknesses, the better you can understand where you should be spending your time. Maybe looking at the AAMC outline, right? Like, once you know, like, oh, I'm struggling with separation techniques, I'll jump into the AAMC outline, which is that broken down outline to explain everything you need to know about the AAMC, and you'll be able to like study up and read about those questions. And then you can use the QBank to do some more practice questions on those areas. And so this is an incredibly useful tool. However, some of you guys may be looking at this and you're thinking like, yes, data is awesome. At least that's how I feel about this. But the challenge is you have to aggregate that data. You have to collect that data. And so if you're just doing the daily question that's released every single day, you might not come across magnetism for like, 3 or 4 weeks. And so in order to get this good snapshot of what are your weak areas and what are your strong areas, it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of investment here. And it would be really nice if I could find that information a little bit quicker. So that takes us to our second product. Besides the analytics system, we're also launching our MCAT Content Diagnostics. So going to the home page, as I mentioned, if you scroll down to the question bank, there's the AAMC style stuff, there's the fundamental passages, and there's also the corresponding stuff with discretes. But now we have a new category, which is the MCAT Content Diagnostic. So what these are, this breaks down into all the categories in the way that the AAMC breaks it down into the 3 different sections. The bio and biochem, the chemistry and physics, and then the psychology and sociology. So each of these diagnostic exams is a bunch of questions. None of them have any passages, and all the questions are within just a single topic, right? Like this is a question just about electrochemistry. It's a question just about the endocrine system. It's a question just about fluid dynamics, or Freud's theories, or Kohlberg's stages of moral development, right? So you'll be able to focus in on specific content areas. And by going through the diagnostic, you'll see a handful of questions in every single topic. And so this, with just the investment of, let's say, an afternoon. Now, it's probably going to be quite a few questions there, but you can do this definitely in just one afternoon. You can go through all of the diagnostics, all 3 of them, and look at your analytics, and you will have seen questions on every single topic. And so you'll have this snapshot, this cross-sectional look to see what are the areas my content is strongest and what are the areas my content is weakest. And as I mentioned, it really doesn't matter where you're at in your prep. If you're at day 1 or if you're at day 150 of 160, right? Like that, this will be a really valuable tool for you. So I hope you guys are excited about this because I'm incredibly excited to announce these tools for you guys. I think that it will be remarkably useful for all of you. And once again, I want to reiterate, all of this is free. These are things that we have been working on for the last year to create and release to you guys, which is a free resource to help you better prepare for test day. Now, I may see some of you guys who are watching this in some of the free trial sessions. As I mentioned, I do sessions every single Monday. I'd love to see you there. But if not, I hope you enjoy these tools, and good luck studying.